and then at the end of the day, you go, I think I may have changed my mind on this guy.
Right here.
Hey, Whisper Nation, before I get you to your video, just want to remind you, the season is coming up fast, and so are your drafts. So if you are not prepared yet, stick with us, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, so you get notified whenever we drop new content, so we can get you prepared for your draft. And if you want to take it a step further, in the description, there is a link to our draft kit. It is only $15, over 120 pages, jam-packed of everything you can need to get you prepared for your draft. So go and get it today. All right, let's get you to that video.
All right, so we're going to move on to our change of heart players, the meat and potatoes of this episode. Johnny, I thought this was good to talk about because, first of all, with this offseason, there's so many ups and downs. But in any offseason, you start out liking a player, and you continuously look at those stats and things that, the storylines and the narratives. And then at the end of the day, you go, I think I may have changed my mind on this guy. I think I've actually done the research to change the story in my head of how this guy's year is going to turn out. And I thought it was very interesting in our mock draft marathon that we did last week. A few guys were coming up on boards, and we're talking with people in the industry, and they're talking about these guys, and you kind of get a little bit of a change of heart on guys. So, Johnny, I want to start this off with you. We're going to give us a few players here that are your change of heart. I'm going to do the same. Who's a guy to you that has been really sticking out as, your first change of heart player?
So one change of heart. Well, we'll start off with the quarterback position. I'll give two because I'm greedy like that, and I know the first one, Travis and I both share together, and a change of heart in a bad way, and that is Josh Allen. Josh Allen, we talked about at the top of the show the mock draft marathon, and during the mock draft marathon, there were a number of times where Josh Allen was available, and we just never pulled the trigger, and not only that, but a lot of times none of the people that we had on the show, they never really pulled the trigger. And when we did bring up Josh Allen, there was always the concern of what if they take away the rushing touchdowns. There is Stephon Diggs, but what if the fit isn't there? There's a lot of question marks. Plus, their schedule is pretty brutal. Like the beginning is pretty nice, but then it gets kind of brutal. And so we are having to take Josh Allen. I don't think that there's. I think the upside is no longer there, and I know that Travis agrees with that as well. And I just realized my photo's not there. So that would be Josh Allen. Would be the one that I'm having a change of heart at the quarterback in a downward motion. Go ahead.
Well, I just think like a lot of what's built on Josh Allen has been these rushing touchdowns, right? And I think he had 7, I believe, last year, led the league in rushing touchdowns last year at the quarterback position. So you like that, but then at the same time, is that repeatable? Especially when they go out and draft a guy like Zack Moss, who wants to take over that Frank Gore role and actually be effective within the red zone and goal line. So that's a thing that I'm looking at, and I'm saying, okay, I don't know if I love the upside as much of Josh Allen. I know he can run, and I know he can do those things. They did bring Stephon Diggs in, but we've seen what that looks like when you bring a new wide receiver over, especially in an offseason like this. Just a little more down on Josh Allen than I think the rest of the industry is.
And then for a change of heart for the quarterback position in a positive light, I'm very surprised at myself that I actually am coming around a little bit, but this is purely on spitefulness. All right. That is quarterback Aaron Rodgers. I just have this eerie suspicion now. Like I have gone through all the data. I have digested that. I have looked at it, and it doesn't look great. I'll admit that. Like none of the data looks great on Aaron Rodgers. What Matt LaFleur looks to be doing doesn't look great. But I will say that if there is one player in the National Football League that I will say is probably the most spiteful quarterback or player in the NFL, that would be Aaron Rodgers. And I think by Green Bay taking Love in the first round and not getting Aaron Rodgers a quarterback or another wide receiver, I think that Aaron Rodgers wants to prove not only to Matt LaFleur, to the Green Bay organization, but to every single player in the NFL that he still has it and he still can do whatever he wants to do on the field. And I think there is a very big possibility Aaron Rodgers just comes out and lights the world on fire. And I think that there might also be a possibility that Matt LaFleur is okay with it in the beginning because he wants to kind of back Aaron Rodgers per se and say, hey, I know I took a quarterback in the first, but I still believe that you've got it, and we're going to show people by the game script because the weather's going to be nice and all of that. And I just think that there were so many times in the mock draft marathon where Aaron Rodgers was falling, and like I would get him in like the 10th, 11th, and like my first target around there is Carson Wentz. But if Carson Wentz was taken, and it happened a lot where I was like, okay, I'll take Aaron Rodgers here because I can pair him with Allen Lazard a couple rounds later and possibly get the double dip. Or if I took my anchor Devontae Adams in the first round. I just think that there is a very realistic possibility, and I'm going to bet on Aaron Rodgers that he's just going to come out and just set the world on fire. That's all. And there's like really no justification as far as analytics.
Well, I love that.
But
As a Packers fan, I'd love to hear that. I don't know if I'm as completely sold that that'll happen. I just think they've been very clear about what they want to do with this offense. But we'll see, and that's definitely an interesting take to say that they'll start the year hot and then try to rely on the run towards the end of the year. So maybe have a contingency plan on the waiver wire if you do end up going with Aaron Rodgers in your drafts.
Well, and
one of my changes.
Sorry, I know I keep interrupting you, Travis. I'm sorry, dude. I'm like a racehorse.
It happens. It happens every episode for the last 3 years. I'm very much used to it.
But I just want to say that that's what's so great about taking the quarterback is you know that you're gambling on, because if that happens, right? If he starts off hot, gets you off to a street, and then kind of does start fading out to more of a run game, it's so easy to pivot at that position that's why it's worth, investing in Aaron Rodgers. That's why I'm saying if it's a 10th or 11th round pick, it's worth investing because you can pivot so easily.
Well, the Denver Broncos invested heavily in Melvin Gordon this offseason. They paid him the 9th highest contract at the running back position. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Melvin Gordon because I wasn't really sold on Melvin Gordon coming into this offseason going to the Broncos, but I'm starting to like what I see here and what they're setting up because it looks a little like what the Chargers had with Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler for a lot of years there. And so if you look at that, you're saying, well, I don't know, Philip Lindsay exists. I think Lindsay is going to exist. I mean, we talked about 9th highest paid running back in the league, which Denver made Melvin Gordon. Lindsay is only the 126th highest paid. You've got Royce Freeman there, who's the 49th highest paid. I just think the money says that they're going to give the goal line carries, the first and second down work to Melvin Gordon. He does catch the ball, so he'll have his games where he can, be that guy. He's finished though with even with these other guys like Austin Eckler involved with 14 fantasy points per game over the last 4 seasons. So I think that even if Lindsey's going to be there, and I think Lindsey's a steal in his own right, Melvin Gordon's risk is kind of baked in at his ADP right now. I mean, I like where he's going. He's been, a consistent player. He's the RB 17th in the middle of that 3rd round. So we're talking, about the guys you'd be looking at taking there. And I think Melvin Gordon's going to be okay. And I'm actually turning around on making him my RB2 this year. Or let's say you go completely upside down. He's your RB1. I don't think that's a terrible situation to be in.
Yeah, I definitely like the Melvin Gordon pick. I think that even if we see it every single year, Melvin Gordon on a points per game basis gets you, 18 to 20 fantasy points when he's starting and when he's playing. Last year he had a down year and he averaged a little bit lower than that, but when this guy has started the season, he is a touchdown monster. And that's what they brought him in there for, right? Like they wanted him around the goal line for sure because they needed a big and like let's not forget, like Melvin Gordon is one of the best at the goal line at scoring touchdowns in the red zone. Like that's why they brought him in. So you love the upside. And then it's like almost insulting that like Melvin Gordon is going so late in the 3rd round because this is a guy that just a year ago before the holdout he was top 5 pick consideration. Right. And then now just because he switches a team and it's like, look, like you said, it's looking exactly like Chargers offense.
Yeah.
And we were still fine with it last year. Like I think
it's kind of built into that third round, and he could be a steal. There's a lot of guys going there that you're like, okay, well, maybe we're just being a little too low here. Pandering a little bit to Chelsea and her Philly love here, I'm going to bring up Zack Ertz as another change of heart player, because I think with the emergence of George Kittle, Mark Andrews' year last year, Zack Ertz is being pushed down in ADP. I mean, I've seen him go at 401. In the mock draft marathon, I saw him going in the 5th in some cases. I think this is a guy we have to look at. Like last year, he had the second most targets amongst tight ends, 134 targets, guys. Like that would have been 11th amongst wide receivers. He would have been a top 30 wide receiver just in scoring alone. And if you look at this wide receiving core, and I know we like Jalen Reagor, and I know Deshaun Jackson has good games in his repertoire, but Alshon Jeffrey's hurt. Deshaun Jackson hasn't been the cleanest bill of health. And if you're looking at who's the bread and butter of this passing game, it's Zack Ertz. It's been Zack Ertz. We keep trying to say it's not going to be the next year, and it continues to be him. I think he's a discount and has a real shot at being top 5, top 3 again in production, and you're getting him at a discount. You'll be able to stack your other skill positions, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and then get Zack Ertz potentially. I think you'd be sitting in a really pretty situation if you were able to do that. So I wouldn't sleep on Zack Ertz too much, and that's just kind of my guy that's been a change of heart, because I was starting to at the beginning of this offseason. Johnny, do you have another? Go for it.
Well, I wanted to mention, so I'm going to do like a 2-for-1 here on my running backs.
Classic.
Yeah, classic game time here. 2-for-1, but you'll understand why in just a second, Whisper Nation, why I want to do a 2-for-1 and why it makes sense. And that would be running back Zack Moss. And I know Big Travy's super excited right now, and listen, this has not so much to do with the running back Zack Moss, but and Devin Singletary. It has to do with uncertainty, and the uncertainty is that we have no idea what Buffalo is going to do with this running back system. We know that they want to run the ball, but we also know that Josh Allen likes to take goal line carries. We know that they said Zack Moss was going to take the Frank Gore role, quote unquote Frank Gore role, whatever that means. I don't know. 10 carries a game and goal line is what we all presume, but then it doesn't make sense because he is better at pass catching than Singletary is. So you would presume that he would take down maybe that, but and then it's like, okay, well then Singletary would be the main running back, and then you look at where Singletary is going. He's going in that early 4th round, and so for me, this all comes down to uncertainty and then draft capital. So very similar to, like the 49ers, running backfield. There are very interesting pieces there, but I'm very choosy which ones I want to invest in. And for me, when I'm looking at this, like with all the uncertainty, Singletary, I like him as a running back. I think he's good. But to get him in the 4th round when I don't know exactly what his volume is going to be, because I can't trust this coaching staff and what they're going to tell me. And so for me, I'm coming around on Zack Moss because in our mock draft marathon, which I'm sorry I keep referencing it, but that's what I'm going to go off of. I just kept drafting him because he was there in the 10th, 11th round. And if I'm, taking a dart throw at what looks to be, something I'm not sure of in the 10th round, like, okay, if I'm getting the Frank Gore goal line carries and 10 carries a game, there is upside there. So that's why I'm coming around on Zack Moss. I think that his draft capital is just right. It's not to say I don't think that Singletary is a good running back. I'm uncertain, and that is why I am fading Singletary now, and I am now pro Zack Moss. I cannot believe I'm saying that. Gross.
We should clip that out and just keep replaying it.
No, I plan on deleting that part.
No, I think it's great that you finally have seen the light here on Zack Moss. That you've been listening to Big Travy over the offseason, and he's told you, look, like this guy just projects to be a more well-rounded back than Devin Singletary, and the ADP is sitting there with a nice, juicy upside to it. So I agree. I couldn't agree more, Johnny, with your take on Zack Moss here. One of the guys that I've really come around to, my last change of heart player I wanted to talk about here today was Brandon Cooks. I think that Brandon Cooks has been nothing but consistent in the NFL, despite changing team, despite having the different QBs he's had, and honestly been very lucky because he's played with Drew Brees, Tom Brady as two of his three QBs. Jared Goff had a good year with Brandon Cooks, so we'll give him that. But Brandon Cooks now will be playing with Deshaun Watson and Bill O'Brien, and he kind of fits perfectly with what Deshaun Watson does. Right now, you look at what Brandon Cooks has done in his past. He's played all 16 games, 4 of the last 5 seasons. So I know he's going to get this, concussion, injury-prone tag, but 4 of the last 5 years, all 16 games. So I don't know if that argument can really even be made. 119 targets has been his average over those last 4 seasons. 76 receptions, 1,149 yards, and he averages 7 touchdowns. The offense should be throwing. This defense is not what it used to be. It's going to continue to push the ball down the field. You look at what Bill O'Brien's tried to set up here, and that's a bunch of burners down the field for Deshaun Watson. They want to just splash big plays, and I think they're going to have to compete in games based on what's happened to this defense over the last few years. I know J.J. Watt exists, but then you're looking at some of these people that have left the team in the secondary, and you're just saying, I like where Cooks is going. The 8th round, Johnny, a full round after Will Fuller, and I think you could make a case to pick up both of these guys. I love Will Fuller's upside, but I think Brandon Cooks is going to be sitting there with a bunch of these vacated targets from DeAndre Hopkins and could feast in his own right as well. So I've been liking scooping up Brandon Cooks as a late wide receiver. I think the value is there.
I don't mind it. If I miss out on Will Fuller and, because I do want a piece of that offense, and I don't have David Johnson, and I don't mind the Brandon Cooks. I just don't see the upside, unfortunately, for Brandon Cooks to be, crack a top 12 wide receiver. That's my only hesitancy. Well, I mean, I guess I could if Will Fuller gets injured, then Brandon Cooks is the number 1. But I do want to mention this, how much is Larry Fitzgerald over here shaking his head and being like, wow, dude, you went from Drew Brees to Tom Brady to Jared Goff, now to Deshaun Watson. Meanwhile, I stay in Arizona and I go from, John Skelton to a trash can, back to John Skelton to,
I know he's gotten good quarterbacks, but Brandon Cooks has got to be feeling like Will Smith in that episode. Why don't they want me, man? He just continues to get traded every year. Brandon Cooks, man, like I said, he averages 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. How could you not want this guy on your team? I just don't get why he continuously gets traded around. But Houston's going to have another weapon here, and I just think that's a situation where I think both of these guys can eat. I love the upside of Will Fuller. I agree with you, Johnny. I think that's a league-winning upside guy. But Brandon Cooks has, I think, back-end wide receiver, wide receiver. We could have a situation where he's a top 15, top 20 wide receiver, and you're getting him in the 8th round. I mean, sign me up for that kind of value all the time.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility. I want to bring up a guy that I'm having a change of heart at the wide receiver position, but in a negative light here, Travis. And I apologize beforehand because I may hurt your feelings here, and I don't mean to. But I am coming off the boat a little bit on JuJu Smith-Schuster. Not that I don't think he's a good wide receiver. I think that he is a really good wide receiver. I think he's super talented. I am just concerned with where you're having to take him and the fact that he's tied to Ben Roethlisberger in production. I know that you're gonna you make good arguments for saying that well, you can't take what Duck Hodges and things like that. You can't take that into consideration because Big Ben is back. He's healthy. He looks good, and we don't like to predict injuries. And I get it. But if I'm looking at this very similarly to, Buffalo's backfield, but looking at the wide receiver position for Pittsburgh, I think I would much rather have the guy that's a little bit lower and Deontay Johnson that's going in the 9th, 10th round And I know that at least if Big Ben goes down, that it's fine. It's going to be okay. And so I think with the draft capital, I'd much rather have a guy like that and save that, invest in a better pick that I'm more sure about in the 4th round. And so for me, I just am finding myself fading JuJu just for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I don't agree with that take at all. I don't know why you'd fade a guy that's already going in the 4th round. If you look at guys going around him, like I like your point here that he's tied to his quarterback. That makes sense. He was also injured last year. He also had his own injuries in those games with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. So that was part of the reason too, I believe. But you're right, Deontay Johnson, no matter who was quarterback, I mean, he was a fine specimen. I like taking both of these guys. I don't think you're out of the question. We saw what AB and JuJu were able to do together in that offense. We see what happened with Big Ben. Like, over the last 4 years, Big Ben said, screw you, Todd Haley, get out of town. I want my quarterback coach to call the offense now, meaning that Big Ben wants to be the coordinator. He's like one of the top guys at being the coordinator on his team, and they want to throw the football. But looking at the guys that go around JuJu Smith-Schuster, Calvin Ridley, A.J. Brown, Tyler Lockett, you think any of those 3 guys aren't tied to their quarterback? I mean, I think you're taking the same risk here in saying that Calvin Ridley, if Matt Ryan were to go down, would Calvin Ridley still be as good? Would A.J. Brown still be as good as if Tannehill got hurt? I think the whole reason we love A.J. Brown is because Tannehill got the contract, and he was the guy who unleashed A.J. Brown. And then Tyler Lockett tied to one of the best touchdown-throwing, efficient quarterbacks in the league in Russell Wilson. So I think where you're going
is those guys aren't injury-prone. Like, that's the difference. Like, Big Ben has missed games, has missed a lot of games throughout his last few years of his career. He's always missed games. So that's my concern. Like, Russell Wilson hasn't missed any games. And so that's where the argument is different for me because, and Ryan Tannehill,
you've gotten that up before, but like 4 of the last 6 years, take out last year. And before that, yes, Big Ben missed time, but he still played 14 games in 4 of those years. So like 14 games is enough for me to be invested in JuJu Smith-Schuster. I can discount some of JuJu Smith-Schuster's production with the terrible quarterback play for him being injured himself. I don't know. I think he's locked into top 5 upside. And I think when you're looking at the guys around him, like Calvin Ridley, not really top 5 upside in my mind, only because Julio still exists. Tyler Lockett, same with him because of DK Metcalf. And I'm just looking at some of these guys, and JuJu, I think the risk is there for JuJu. But I understand it. I get it. And I think they'll move him back into the slot, which is a big reason I like him. But I like that you brought it here. It's good to play devil's advocate for some of these guys that we get so hyped on as well. Chelsea, was there anybody at all that you've been looking at here that you've had a change of heart when you were watching some of the mock draft marathon? Are there guys that you just came in, you said no on, but you're thinking about yes?
Well, it's funny that I really appreciate Johnny on Aaron Rodgers, and I love that narrative twist. Because I do think we forget that Aaron Rodgers is such a guy that plays with the chip on his shoulder. And this offseason, like, what a time to develop a chip. So I don't know. I should always be talked off a ledge when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, but I am back on that ledge and dropped the guy. That was a very exciting take, Johnny. I really appreciated that. And then I just want to comment on the JuJu Smith-Schuster piece because I have him in a dynasty, and I drafted him like very high in my dynasty league last year, and then just was like,
yeah, you saved me.
Heartbroken.
You saved me because I wanted him, and I ended up Devontae Adams because you took JuJu.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to save myself this year in my team because I put so much into JuJu's performance, and so I'm really hoping that he has a year. And I'm with Travis on this one. I think it's gonna work well for him. I don't like Johnny's take. I'm hopeful for Big Ben, but look, the guy's 38 years old. He's going to become 39 at the end of this year, and we don't really think much about quarterbacks in that age. I can't believe nobody's talking about Big Ben's age like they did Brady's age for so long. Mm-hmm. It feels like he's sort of like being overlooked as a really aging quarterback. And look, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers as an aging quarterback, as somebody who's like playing into his later years, but Aaron Rodgers is 2 years younger than Big Ben. So I don't know. I think
a lot of miles, a lot of beating on Big Ben's body too. He hasn't been the most safe quarterback either.
Exactly. And what concerns me most is we didn't really see a strong backup quarterback out of Pittsburgh either. So
and they still didn't address it like this offseason. Yeah.
Right. We had all last year to really figure out a backup quarterback situation in that offense and didn't. So I'm very nervous for JuJu And if it works out, I'm with Travis, top 5.
And the last the last thing I want to say is like the major things like Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, like these guys take care of their bodies. Ben Roethlisberger is like chug beers in the off season, like let's fatten up.
Well,
that's
what he used to do that, but he's definitely more in shape now than he's ever been. But yes,
but so he's still not
agree.
The model of health, not I stopped drinking smoothies and milkshakes when I turned 32. Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
not at all. Yeah.
So, but I will say, like at the end of the year, like if JuJu Smith is top 5, will I be surprised at all? No. Like I would say, yeah, that's in his range of outcomes. I am just a little more skeptical than I was coming in, and that's the only reason I have a change of heart.
Well, Whisper Nation, we want to know what you think. Make sure you DM us or drop it in the comments here on YouTube. Whatever change of heart your guy you're going for, you can call the hotline that we mentioned above. That's 1-833-4FF-TALK. For Johnny Game Time Hicks, Chelsea Lee Byers, I am Big Travy. We are the Fantasy Whisperers, and we're out. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.